The world of The Witcher is ancient and full of secrets. Over the centuries, it has been inhabited by all sorts of creatures, mysterious and powerful ones. Those who understood the essence of the continent, and beings of mere flesh and blood. Some of them perished, disappearing almost without a trace, sometimes leaving behind not even a memory. Others are still trying to adapt to the new conditions and survive, to endure fierce competition with the newly arrived races. Young and energetic peoples who already consider this world their own, yet understand none of the forces truly at work. They conquer and reshape this land by brute force, leaving scars on the continent's body that will never heal. Nevertheless, the arrogance and ignorance of the new masters of the continent will not save them from the lonely, ancient, oppressed, yet incredibly powerful creatures waiting for their chance at revenge. Creatures that once ruled the expanses of this world and are ready to regain their former positions. Creatures that can truly be called indigenous, for whom the continent is truly their home, a home for which they are ready to fight to the end of time. And who knows what this struggle will lead to. It is not surprising that people fear them, demonize them, try to erase even the memory of them. And it is even less surprising that no matter how hard they try, they will not succeed. Today we will talk about the true rulers of the continent, about the oldest and most ancient beings in this world, about the peoples and races that once ruled the continent, and despite terrible cataclysms, bloody wars, and human expansion, managed to survive. They managed to preserve themselves, and they will continue to fight. However, before we begin this video, we would like to thank our patrons for their support, who have not abandoned this channel even in its most difficult times. Thank you, everyone. Do join the list of these awesome people. We are preparing a lot of interesting content about the world of The Witcher, and we are very glad that you guys are with us. In the meantime, get yourself some snacks because now we're gonna tell you about the most ancient races of the continent. Bobolaks. Let us start our story with the most inconspicuous creatures whose existence in the world of The Witcher is very easy to forget. They do not interfere in wars, do not participate in politics, and try not to show themselves to the powerful ones of this world. Perhaps that is why they are one of the few among the other firstborn races of the continent that have managed to survive despite all the cataclysms and even the wave of those coming from other worlds caused by the conjunction of the spheres. We're talking about the Bobolaks, creatures of small stature up to 1.5 meters tall, covered with fur from head to toe, which according to descriptions most resemble humanoid beavers. The Bobolaks were helped to survive by their habitat. Mountains and gorges are their home, and although humans actively exterminated this race in their desire to reach valuable materials, the Bobolaks survived in Macam alongside dwarves and in remote, inaccessible areas of the mountains, which are difficult and inconvenient for humans to reach. Despite the fact that the Bobolaks do not have a strong statehood, rarely possess serious magic, and are not trained in cruelty, they still remain an independent people. Their reclusiveness serves them well. Bobolaks are a rare phenomenon on the continent. They stick to the mountains, living in secluded underground communities and on high peaks, and trade almost exclusively with dwarves and gnomes. But even after centuries of cruel treatment by other races, the Bobolaks are a proud people who refuse to bow down and submit to the other races around them. Even the few Bobolaks in the lowlands are unwilling to change their way of life and still honor the tradition of their ancestors. Even when humans drive them into reservations, they remain true to themselves and do not adapt to human culture, as gnomes and dwarves do everywhere else. They are proud of being different, and nothing can take that pride away from them. Dryads. Along with the Bobolaks, the Dryads also had to survive in a constantly changing world and come to terms with such misfortunes as the invasion of humans on the continent. They are one of the first creatures of the continent, deeply understanding the essence of the nature of this world, thus being able to live in complete harmony with it, mesmerizing and incomprehensible to the races that arrived in the world after the conjunction of the spheres. These are the Dryads. Now they are known only as the Dryads of Brokilon because only in this giant forest massif has their tribe managed to survive. However, they were once widely represented in all the forests of the continent. They were truly its masters. The basis of their race was originally the Hamadryads, humanoid creatures that are very strongly connected to one specific tree, have a truly symbiotic relationship with it, and are born literally from the flesh of trees. But with the arrival of more humanoid races on the continent, the Dryad people had to change. To protect their race, the number of ordinary, more humanoid Dryads increased. Where did they come from? From intimate relationships between Hamadryads and elves who arrived on the continent. Therefore, ordinary Dryads have elven blood and a talent for magic, along with the healing skills of Hamadryads. Only the children of Dryads and elves are considered pure-blooded Dryads. However, with the arrival of humans, Dryads began to form relationships not only with elves, but also with members of the human race. This is because there are no males among the Dryads, and mating with other races is their only chance to reproduce. The Dryads borrowed a lot from humans and elves, even the beginnings of relationships and a state, but they were not able to live in peace. The desire of humans to subjugate everything to their will left the Dryads with no choice, even though the forest nymphs needed men for reproduction. Wars began, and the Dryads learned to defend themselves, but they were driven out to the great forest of Brokilon. They began to kidnap human children, little girls, give them enchanted water, and turn them into Dryads in this way. Such harsh methods of resistance against humans allowed them to survive. And so, although the Dryads are in a difficult position, they are still strong and capable of resisting the human invasion. Aguaras. However, the same cannot be said about the Aguaras, powerful beast-born creatures capable of taking human form. These beings never formed a state or fielded armies like the Dryads, but although few in number, they managed to survive for many centuries both before and after humans arrived. Once upon a time, the Aguaras ruled the continent. The first races of this world feared those creatures, and even the humanoid newcomers were initially powerless against them. The Aguaras appeared as foxes or other inconspicuous animals, wielded potent magic, and could weave incredibly realistic illusions. Castles with soaring walls, vast perilous jungles, or a marching army ready for battle. It did not matter. The Aguara could conjure any mirage, cloud the minds of sentient beings, and drive them into overwhelming terror. And they kidnapped small children. All this was done so that, as in case of the Dryads, they could create the next generation, using magic and suggestion to transform humanoid children into Aguaras. So there we have it, another race of creatures about whose male representatives little is known. Aguaras descended from mystical animals of the past and honed their skills with the onset of the conjunction of the spheres. However, as a species, they certainly existed before the conjunction and were always native to this world, although they did not need such power and did not require the children of elves or humans to continue their lineage. As in the case of the Dryads, it was the conjunction of the spheres that changed them and compelled them to adapt. However, unlike the Dryads, the Aguaras have always been loners, never a people. This brought them to the brink of extinction. Only a few Aguaras remained on the continent, and most of them lost their powers and reverted to their animal nature. Nevertheless, in the dark forests and cold caves, the indescribably intelligent eyes of strange foxes still flash, every now and then venturing too close to human settlements, and after their appearance, children disappear. That is why the dark forests are still feared. Despite centuries of domination, humans have still not conquered the mysterious thickets that hide the secrets of ancient times. Vojinoi. From the mountains and forests, we must descend to the depths of the sea because in the world of The Witcher, even underwater, an entire race has developed, which has managed to thrive on this planet for thousands of years, becoming a true civilization with its own culture, its own gods, its own magic, and its own social structure. We're talking about intelligent humanoid inhabitants of the underwater realm who share these depths with mermaids and nereids, who have long been called water spirits and whom ordinary folk have named fish people. The Vojinoi are an ancient race whose appearance can be described as a blend of fish and human. They live in whole cities on the seabed, which mortals can never reach. They breathe underwater through gills and are poorly adapted to life above the waves. So when they come ashore, they wear special breathing masks akin to astronauts in our world, which speaks of their rather high level of development as a people. Waterfolk are not afraid of the world above because they often encounter such powerful creatures below that the mere thought of them paralyzes ordinary people with horror. They have learned to coexist with these godlike beings, worship them, and are even capable of resisting them if necessary. The waterfolk work metal and know how to build cities beneath the waves. The priests and sorcerers of this race wield true primordial magic unlike anything else. Thanks to their underwater existence, the fish folk were able to survive all the cataclysms that befell the planet better than the other elder races of the continent, and they are prepared for almost any disaster that may come their way. They would have continued to mind their own affairs beneath the waves and might never have disturbed the world above. However, after arriving on the continent, intrusive humans reached them. Endless coastal cities and ports, waste from thousands of settlements dumped into the water, the lust for pearls, and ruthless fishing. All this greatly affected the lives of the fish people and introduced previously unseen risks to their world. Now the waterfolk are forced to come ashore more and more often, and they ponder ever more urgently how to oppose humans, like how human activity could lead to dire consequences for rivers, lakes, and seas. And therefore, according to them, sooner or later something will have to be done about this problem. Dragons. Returning to land, we can finally remember the most powerful of the intelligent races, creatures that ruled the continent for thousands of years before the conjunction of the spheres. Not only on land, but also in the air. They were a force that no intelligent race on the continent could contend with. They could take other forms. They burned their enemies with merciless fire, and could only be hidden from in the deepest caves of inaccessible mountains, and even then, not always. We are of course talking about the incredible and fantastic dragons. They were the best at absorbing magical energy from the surrounding nature. They literally breathed magic. It flowed through their veins. And all this was before the conjunction, when torrents of power from other worlds rushed onto the continent and made magic far more accessible to mortal races. In their natural form, dragons looked like giant lizards. Some might recall the Vran, lizard-like humanoids that inhabited the continent before the arrival of humans, and they might think that Vrans and dragons must have common ancestors. However, there is no evidence to support this assumption. Instead, there is evidence that even after the arrival of the elves, dragons remained the most powerful creatures on the continent. Only the arrival of humans changed the status quo. This is because dragons have always felt an instinctive aversion to humans, their way of life, and their values. In addition, human sorcerers have always highly valued the magic-imbued parts of a dragon's body: brains, teeth, blood, and so on, all of which they used for their most potent elixirs. Add to that the expansion of humans across the continent, and you have the basis for absolute enmity between the two peoples. This enmity brought the far less numerous and less united dragons to the brink of extinction. Even if a dragon could kill 100 hunters, another 100 would come after it. And then there were the dragon hunters, most of whom had no moral principles whatsoever and would take on almost any job for a good fee. As a result, over centuries of human domination, some species of dragons, such as rock dragons and golden dragons, became almost completely extinct. Others, such as green and red dragons, try to hide in remote places or take human form to live unnoticed among people. It is very likely that over time the former rulers of the continent, the majestic dragons, will become completely extinct because of humanity. And that, of course, will be a very sad moment. But at least they are fighting and will continue to fight for their survival. And if you guys want to learn more about them, we've got a very detailed bestiary issues about dragons. Do check the link out, it'll be interesting. Genies. From incredibly powerful creatures, we must move on to beings that are close to divine. Creatures capable of changing reality itself with their will. Beings that were born along with the world of the Witcher, are its completely natural and integral part, capable of manipulating reality and embodying the very essence of nature. We're talking about genies, a race whose limits of power are difficult to comprehend. They are divided into 4 subspecies and embody the 4 elements: water, earth, fire, and air. They live in a magical realm, each species in one of its 4 elemental planes. For the magical world, like the physical, has its roots in nature, and the 4 elements make up the 4 planes of magic. The Jinn are spirits of air, whose home is the air plane. Ifrits are spirits of fire, who dwell in the fire plane. Dao are spirits of earth, and Marids are creatures of the primordial element of water from the watery plane. No one knows how many genies exist. However, there are certainly many. From time to time, particularly powerful sorcerers attempt to subdue them, and when they do succeed, they gain unimaginable power over space and reality. A subjugated Dao can be forced to move mountains, and a Jinn can grant immortality. However, it is exceptionally difficult to maintain control over such a primordial being, and if a genie of the elements breaks free, its fury cannot be stopped. It is impossible to destroy a genie. It will be reborn on its own elemental plane because it is a part of the world. If you take a handful of mud and stir it into the water, it will eventually settle to the bottom, returning to its usual state. Just like that, genies always return in time. For as long as this world exists, they will exist as well. And even if humans wish to seize the power of these amazing beings, they will never succeed, because humans are newcomers, and genies are the very essence of the witch's world. Such are the oldest races of the continent, still fighting for their lives in this world. We did not mention the Vran because they're extinct, nor did we mention higher vampires because they're not native to the continent. We did not mention demons because they also do not belong to the familiar flesh of the planet. This video features those races that are still capable of fighting, some of which will most likely outlive humans and elves on the continent. Civilization may lie in ruins, but these peoples and creatures will continue to exist and claim a new world again and again, because they are the blood of the witch's world. And if they disappear, the continent will lose a part of itself, both in history and in nature. This cannot be allowed. Over thousands of years of change and cataclysms, this planet has already lost too much. We'd like to thank everyone who watched this video to the end, and we look forward to the next story, which will definitely be told to you when the old witcher speaks once more.